can if your name is not there, just put it in the chat box. The video is going to add you so that you can be able to ensure that we keep track of you participating in the classes. So today we are going to have a continuation of what we did. Remember that the last two classes we did Google productivity tools, which is basically those tools that Google avails for free, those that you can be able to use. Those that you can be able to use to really advance your work and to ensure that your work is a more advanced level instead of just a basic email only and a few other things. So today we are going to take a slight turn towards a different topic. As you guys had seen in the invitation email, that we are going to do data journalism. And basically we are going to try and see how the digital world has created a massive bridge between the world of data and the world of journalism, so that we can be able to see how you can be able to really improve your reporting, to really enhance the way that you do your own research, especially if you are involved with investigative journalism, and to be able to see how you can be able to really match the two fields of data and journalism, and to ensure that your career is much more advanced, that the output of your day-to-day work is much more improved. So I'm just going to share the screen right away, and then we are going to start our class. So what we are going to do, really try and see if we can be able to our presentation as possible. I know the time allocated for the class is really not enough for us to be able to cover these areas that we are aiming to tackle in this fellowship. But what we want to do is to really ensure that we give you the basics and we prick your interest and your knowledge, so that you can be able to go and do much more advanced research for yourself, and then you can be able to extrapolate it into the field that you're working on, because we understand that the people who are participating in the fellowship are from different backgrounds. So we give you the basics, the background on which everybody can build on, and then you can do how you can be able to build on. Share this that use it for your own purposes after the class. That with a few definitions, because we understand that this is the first class that we are tackling this. So just going to go through a few definitions, and then we build on that as we go along. So really the first definition that we're going to have is those two terms we're going to disintegrate it into their own respective identities for journalism and for data. Then we're going to see how we can be able to put them together as one identical object that we can build on for our own individual skills. So journalism is the production and distribution of reports on current events based on facts and supported proof or evidence. Applies to the occupation as well as collaborative media who gather and publish information based on facts and supported with proof or evidence. So what we mean by that is really the overall aim of journalism is really to produce and distribute reports to other various places away from the place in which the occurrence was actually. So what we find is that we have different types of journalism, as we're going to see, And we also have like the way we disseminate the information is diverse, and also the kind of information that we disseminate is diverse. We're going to look through all that, and then what we mean by both the occupation and the media is the actual work of being a journalist, of actually producing and distributing those reports is called journalism, while the media is also called journalism. So the media that collaborates to gather and publish that information is also called the field of journalism. And then the other part of the class is data, which are values of qualitative and quantitative variables about one or more subjects or persons. So by that we mean that we are collecting information based on individuals. It can either be qualitative or quantitative. We are going to look at that in our next class when we delve into the part for data. So we are going to define what is qualitative data. We're going to see examples. We're also going to define quantitative data. We're going to see examples. But there is a slight bit definition in the next slide, which we are going to see as we go along. So we are going to look at an infographic. I decided the infographic so that we have the diversity of text, because the infographic literally puts everything together that highlights the various types of data that we can be able. And that is the infographic. We have different kinds of data. We have qualitative data, which really highlights in the basic definition of qualitative data is it explains the qualities of that individual. The qualities that separates a group into the individuals of the group. So in qualitative data, we have nominal data, things like data, things like economic status, grades, and also a few other things. For quantitative data, we have two types, and you find that depending on the kind of field that you're focused on, you are going to encounter most of these, at least one of them. For quantitative data, which is much more common compared to qualitative data, and it's much more easy to collect. We have two types of quantitative data. We have discrete and we have continuous. So for discrete, the data has specific data points. It's not like a number line, because it's not going to be able to break it further down. Like between two variables, you cannot be able to have a middle ground or sort of. If I can be able to say that, because for discrete data, it's those data types in which the numerical values cannot be disintegrated further. I really hope I'm clear on that. So examples like the things like number of students in a class, the number of home runs in a baseball game, the scores in a football game, the number of countries in Africa, the population size of that, of a particular country or a particular city, because you find that you cannot have 1.5 number of students in a class or 2.75. You can only have two students or 3 students or 100 students, but not 150.75. And that's why you find that the numbers are really not they're not really tied to each other, in the sense that it's very rare for you to find numbers that overlap in discrete data. But for continuous data, it's the other way around. You find that when you are doing the measurement of something, like you can be able to have so many decimal points, you can be able to extrapolate it into maybe 2 decimal places, 1 decimal place, depending on the kind of measurement tool that you are using. And those are what we call continuous data. There is not that breakdown in the interval in terms of decimal numbers and all that. So this is like height of children. That's why you can say that somebody is 5 feet and 4 inches and stuff like that. The square footage in a house. So you find that when you go and do the measurement in the class, especially for those who are involved in construction, you find that you can be able to have decimal points in the square footage of the cars. And then the speed also has so really what we mean is the variables in between the beginning and the last variable in the scale is continuous. It's not discrete. It's not just whole numbers, but you can also be able to have decimal numbers and such things of the like. So I really hope that those definitions are clear. We are going to look at them as we go along. I know we are also going to see there are various applications even as we start the data analytics class. So we can also have more clarifications on that in case the definitions are not clear. So now we want to take the second arm of the class. The first part was data, the types, and then the second type we are going to have is the types of journalism. So you find that journalism as any field, you find that journalism as any field has its own components, it has its own various parts that you can be able to actually break it down and see the applications for each of them. We're just going to look at all of them at once. So somebody is talking in the background. Please let's ensure that we mute ourselves. So we're going to look at 5 types of journalism. We have investigative journalism. So I'm just going to read through them as I explain. So investigative journalism means that what you're doing is you're actually or consider unintentionally behind a huge mass of facts and circumstances, and then of course the analysis and exposure term says we actually doing journalism that is based on doing investigations of trying to unearth the truth or facts that are hidden behind a mass of information or that have been deliberately hidden by somebody who is in power or somebody that's trying to conceal something that they do not want.
Looks like we have lost the train a bit. Let's exercise patience. Probably he's facing some internet challenges, but I trust he will get on board shortly. Thank you for your question.
So now we're back. Can you guys be able to hear me?
Yes, we are getting you. Continue.
Okay. So journalism. No, what's up with my slides? So as I said that we are going through the types of journalism. Okay. So we looked about we defined investigative journalism. So now I want us to define digital or online journalism. And this is a contemporary form of journalism where editorial content is distributed via the internet as opposed to publishing or broadcasting. So here you find that the journalism that we have is really just based on the internet and distributing that content to your target audience through the internet instead of actually having a setup of all the instruments to be able to broadcast or the printing houses and stuff like that, be able to print your information. And then the next part we have is opinion journalism. And this is a journalism type of journalism in which reports on a topic which reports on a topic using subjective ideas rather than objective facts. Opinion journalists report stories from their own perspectives, including their own thoughts and biases. It is useful in helping people understand their own opinions and values as well as develop a fuller picture of reality when consuming reports from multiple perspectives. And a classic example of opinion journalism is something like a podcast in which somebody is giving their own opinion about a particular topic or about a wide range of topics using their own mediums in which they can be able to get either through the internet or through other sources. But really, opinion journalism is usually based mostly on the internet. But you find that sometimes people are given columns to be able to print them on newspapers or magazines. So that's also another form of journalism. Broadcast journalism. So really, broadcast journalism is really news. If we can do actually producing also, of course, sometimes you the particular topic in which they are the main I really don't know why my presentation keeps dropping out of the line. So data journalism is a journalistic process based on analyzing and filtering large data sets for the purpose of creating and elevating a news story. It is a type of journalism reflecting the increased role that numerical data plays in the production and distribution of information in the digital era. It reflects the increased interaction between content producers and other fields such as design, computer science, and statistics and mathematics. So really, data journalism is where we are bridging now the gap between the data that is being generated in the digital age and the skills of reporting that is gained by our journalists, and then merging both of them to produce a story that is much more elevated. So we are continuing with the presentation. Can you guys be able to hear me?
Yes.
Hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we are hearing, but I'm not seeing your presentation. So
you're not seeing even now?
I'm not seeing anything.
Anybody else is not seeing? Yes?
If they are not seeing, I suggest
we are seeing. They rejoin.
I think it's visible. It's presenting.
It's visible. There's a data journalism.
Visible, but it's just the voice. The network is not all that clear.
Yeah. It's because it's a new slide. So
Yeah.
that journalism is now
I'm
what we
not
are
saying
going
anything.
to.
Maybe I'll join you later.
If you are
Okay,
not
okay.
saying leave and then you rejoin, it will be all right.
Okay, data journalism is now what we are going to put our focus in for the next about 1.5 hours that we still have in the class. So somebody said evidence suggests that data journalism is the journalism of the future. And that's somebody who had given their own opinion. I am going to give my own opinion on the same. That is actually not the journalism of the future, but it's the journalism of the present time. Because we are in the digital age, we're in the information age, in which a lot of information and content is being generated all the time. So really now, if you do not have the skills to be able to get data stories from those points, from those contents that is being generated, you are in danger of being left behind, or of your conversations in the journalism space really lacking the substance and the authority that data actually provides for you in this age. So we're going to look at the origins, how it's actually started. So this is a very old practice that has been there for quite a huge number of years, and it was first done by somebody who did it in 1854 in London, who was visualizing an outbreak of cholera in the city. So you find that during those times, that people were actually using water pumps instead of piped water to their houses. And then there was around the city there were different water pumps. And then after some time, there was an outbreak of cholera, and he was actually able to use data journalism to pinpoint how the cases were being distributed, and then they were able to know and understand the process of cholera, and then extrapolate that into other medical fields. So you find that. What he did is he was actually a medical doctor. He was in the field of medicine, and he was actually doing an investigation outbreak, and then he mapped it out. So you see that there are several items on the map. You find these are the blue tab icons represent the wells. So you find that around this particular palm, you find that the cases were much more distributed, especially because those households were all getting their water from this particular point. And then from this particular point, the further you move away, the less and less the cases are being distributed. So that's why you find that they were actually able to stop the outbreak by ensuring that they do not that the citizens do not consume water from that water pump. And then they investigated it, and they actually found that somebody had actually disposed some diapers from a child into found its way into the water pump, and then that's actually what was causing cholera amongst the citizens. So you find that that's a very clear way of visualizing the story. It's very precise and straight to the point, and it was actually able to solve a real life problem. So from this, you can be able to make so many extrapolations. You can see the process that he took. He actually took the data, and he was able to use a scale to be able to represent the size for the bubbles to represent the size of the cases among those streets. And then, of course, you see that the distribution of the cases was reducing the more you move away from that particular water pump. So that's how data journalism actually came about. And then from that, now as the more technology was advancing, the more it was actually growing and growing and finding more relevance and more applications in the field of journalism until now we got to this point where we are in. We're now going to look at types of data journalism stories. So we're going to look at 6 types of data journalism stories. And the first one is a novelty. So what we are going to see is for each type, I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to define, and then I'm going to explain to us how you can actually be able to get a data story out of that. So novelty are those data sets that have never been seen before, and really the way to be able to extrapolate that and to explain that and make a story out of that is by using simple summaries. So because you find that these are data sets that the general public has never had any contact with them, and they are not out there, so people are not very familiar with them. So really the way to be able to make them understand is to be able to use simple summaries. The next one is an outlier. So outlier, as we are going to see even in the data visualization part, is that something that is different from all the members of a particular group. So you find that in or something that does not really follow the set pattern of the group, and the way to be able to use that is to use characters to be able to explain the components and the constituents of this particular outlier that is being identified out of the data set. The archetype is the opposite of outlier. So it's a very typical example of a certain thing. And the easiest way to be able to highlight that is to use modeling. And by modeling, I mean using use cases and then extrapolating that to be able to make a data story, because what you are doing is that you are actually modeling what an archetypical character will look like concerning that particular data set. So when we look at, let's say, the job description or the job distribution in Juba, so what you can do is, because I call 5-year-old journalism graduate to explain like, so you can just be able to pick one example. It's a very common occurrence, so you can be able to pick one example to be able to use it to extrapolate and these are changes of an event over time. So really, it's a time has occurred over time. So really, we need to be able to go about that. Line chart. My apologies for that. So let me just
I think Steve has network issues.
Yeah, looks like kinda, and probably he's trying to change his connection and then bounce back.
Okay.
Yeah. Steve, are you back?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah. What's up, man? Internet
Yes, we
issues
can
or
hear
My
you,
something?
but
net is so
you.
bad today. I don't know what's up with it.
No worries, no worries. You can carry on.
Okay. So as I said, for trends, I hope now I'm visible. I am audible.
Yes, you are.
Yes, sure. Carry on.
Okay. So guys, bear with me because my internet is it's not very stable. So we continue with the types of journalism stories. We had already seen 4 types. For those guys who are saying in the chat that they are lost, we are doing the types of data journalism stories. And if you came a bit late, I'm going to share the PowerPoint for us with us so that we can be able to follow us from the beginning so that we don't keep taking the class back. So the other one, so for trends, before we go to the other one, for trends, as I said, we need to really be able to be a bit conservative and cautious so that we do not make very, very bold conclusions and extrapolations, especially if you are doing things like forecasting. Then the banking really is sort of what we do in the banking is we are instances in which this is not the case, but those are outliers adding up as far as the data is concerned. Then forecasting is calculation and estimation of future events. And the point for forecasting is to be careful not to make estimations about future. So really to be able to ensure that, let's say, for example, if you're forecasting the economic growth of a particular country, what you need to do is really not to really make the forecast to be an overfitting estimation of what you're actually trying to explain. And that's because you really need to leave a room for elasticity and a room for changes either up or down, so that you'll not find that your estimations and forecasting is completely out of line because you are not willing to be able to really provide a room for the forecasting to be able to move either up or down, up or down on the estimation that you're fitting into the calculations. Somebody is asking if I can explain more on archetype. And one thing I want you guys to note is the explanations, the types are really the types, the named types are actually really just like what they mean. So an archetype is a typical example of something. That is the basic definition of what an archetype is. Not concerning the class, concerning English definition. A common example or a typical example of something. So what you need to do is when you are doing something like that, you need an example to be able to model what the archetype and what it usually looks like in a normal setting. So that's why we are saying the easiest way is to use modeling. So because we actually have a lot of varieties that are actually part of that data set. So if you use one model, you can be able to extrapolate. You can be able to extrapolate the model into a much more large data set. So we continue on the importance. Hello? Hello?
Yes, we are getting you, Steve. Continue.
Yeah. Okay. So we continue on the importance of data journalism. So there are several applications, or really how they can be able to apply in elevating our story. And the first one is it's used to tell richer stories. Hello? The second application of data journalism is we can be able, using the data, we can be able to provide more facts and to eliminate the issue of guessing and really trying to make our own stories, but we're actually using the data as evidence and more facts to be able to back up our story. So journalists don't have to rely on quotes or sources who tend to deny everything when they come under pressure. Furthermore, they can reveal how abstract such unemployment affects people based on how abstract things such as unemployment affects people based on age, gender, and education. So here we find that, what we are doing, what we are saying is, you see, usually during the campaign period, especially in our democracies, when people are actually vying for seats, they come and they start making very, very weird suggestions and very weird promises that you definitely know that are not achievable. So what a journalist can do is they can be able to really use data to be able to disapprove and to be able, or either to disapprove or to support the things and the claims that somebody is making, so that you find that the claim is actually based on actual numbers and facts rather than just guessing and people making up their own stuff. Another importance of data journalism is it makes reporting more efficient. So here, reporters frequently collect information from the same sources over and over again. Things like census surveys, police reports, or health reports from things like hospitals or ministries that are responsible for that particular part of the economy. And obtaining and organizing this information can be made infinitely more efficient, even automatic, by keying into the data behind the reports. So what we mean by that is that you streamline the data collection process so that you do not have to really have to do the manual work all the time, but you can actually be able to just have the automatic data collection method, like just like with the example of what we saw with the Google Sheets. What you can do is, once you have one survey already designed and you have it automated to collect data into a Google Sheet or into a spreadsheet, the work is much more simplified. What you can do is, if you are, let's say, do the same data collection the following year or in a different area, what you need to do is just push out the link and the application, and people start feeding the data into the spreadsheets that you had actually that you had actually designed previously. So it becomes much more efficient to do the data collection, to do the data cleaning, to do the analysis, and also to do the reporting, because the data journalism skills that you have obtained have enabled you to be able to streamline the data collection and also the other processes that are involved in doing data journalism to be able to report on the stories that you want to publish. The next one is data can provide deeper insights into information that will be difficult to find or prove. So what data journalism does is it's able to locate outliers and identify trends that are not just statistically significant, but relevant to decompiling the infinitely complex world of today. The journalist uses data to pinpoint outliers, areas of interest, and things which are surprising or which are able to catch the attention of the analyst and the journalist to be able to do the reporting. So what that means is the data that you have enables you to drill deep and deep into the story so that you can be able to actually disintegrate the story into different parts, so that you, for example, if you are doing a story of things like, let's say, unemployment, what you can be able to do is you can be able to really break down those statistics into its constituent components so that you can be able to identify the patterns and outliers. So you find that sometimes you have stories from people which are very different. Let's say a 35-year-old graduate who has never gotten a job, or a 25-year-old who have actually been working for the United Nations for, let's say, 3 years. So what you can do is you can be able to take the data from these two age groups, and then you can be able to use it to highlight and identify which one is an outlier and which one is a more common type of the data that you are actually having, so that you can be able to really compile the complexity of the situation, especially in things like jobs groups or the issue of conflicts and stuff like that. So another last importance for this particular class is they can be able to use data to transform something abstract into something everyone can be able to understand. So what you can do is you can actually be able to generate personalized calculators to help people make informed decisions when buying a car, house, deciding on education, or things like professional paths. So for example, there is a classic example that I actually saw this morning as I was doing some research from class I'm doing. Somebody actually made a very simplified interface that explains skills that are required to be able to get, let's say, a job for a data scientist and a data analyst. And what that person was able to do is they were able to really break it down into different countries. In this instance, he was using United States, Canada, and Mexico as the examples. So what he was able to do is he did the data collection, the analysis, the cleaning, the visualization, and he made a very, very cool dashboard that you can be able to really just use the filters and move around it, so that you can be able to really drill down into something that is relevant for your particular context. So those are the importances that we were able to identify. I know, of course, there might be many others, but really these 5 are able to really cover much more of the importance. And I'm sure that we can be able to identify with this importance, with these points, because you can be able to really see that you can be able to really get at least 1 or 2 things that you can be able to apply for your particular context. I know we only have about an hour to be able to go through the class. So today we are really going to study a lot of theory, and I am going to put the slides into the Google Classroom so that we can be able to really use it. So now I want us to look at a small section for maybe about 20 minutes, and then we can be able to proceed from there. In the meantime, Vida, you can post the attendance in the chat box so that people can be able to start filling in their participation in the class. We're going to do something called data storytelling. And what that does is you are actually using data to be able to tell your stories. It's really a sort of customized data journalism. So whereby you are actually telling your own stories and stories that you were actually preparing for your audience using data. So we're going to do two definitions on the same. I decided to include both of them because they really capture as much explanation as possible instead of just using one for the explanation. So what data storytelling is a method of delivering messages derived from complex data analysis in a way that allows the audience to quickly and easily assimilate the material, understand its meaning, and draw conclusions from it. So what it does is we actually take very complex data sets that has a lot of rows and columns, a lot of content. It has both qualitative and quantitative data, and we really make it in such a way that the audience that we are targeting to consume this information are able to easily understand the material, see the meaning, and draw conclusions from it. The second definition is it's a method to transform statistics or facts into stories in order to communicate public knowledge to people and to support better decision making. Data tells stories, answers questions, and creates an impact on the understanding of our lives. So what we are doing is we are actually transforming the facts and the statistics and all those spreadsheets into meaningful stories that people can be able to identify with, and that they can be able to use to better understand their lives and to be able to create a positive impact, either in their own individual lives or things like policy or things like conflict management and other kind of complex stories that are facing our population day by day. So what data stories does is it combines data visualization with compelling narratives that help the audience to better comprehend and take action based on data analysis. While effective data visualization helps people grasp and remember key takeaways, data storytelling is essential for helping them understand why those takeaways are important. So what we are actually doing is we are giving more explanations on the findings that we were able to get from the data analysis that we undertook and that we had actually started and worked on, so that people can be able to really take a much more simplified and much more customized applications to be able to use in the various contexts in which they are applying the data. So functions of data storytelling. Functions of data storytelling. So the first function is it communicates complex dimensions of the user and the system's needs, and so it creates a space to explore opportunities. So by system, we mean, let's say the education system. What we are doing is the dimensions which are very complex, combining the system, how it is structured, how it was founded, how it's actually being run, and then combining it with the complexity of the individual participant or the individual user. Data storytelling gives us the ability to be able to communicate those complex dimensions and then extrapolate that to create opportunities that we can be able to apply to be able to improve policy, to be able to improve things like research and actually other various fields that we are facing on. Okay, another function is it gives us the ability to be able to understand the scale of social challenges. It provides a sense of the scale of the challenges as compared to personal experiences. Because what you find is that, let's say, for example, somebody, let's use that example again for the job application. You find that there is a high rate of unemployment in Kenya, but you find that there is a high rate of unemployment, let's say in Kenya, but you find that somebody actually was able to get a job immediately after they got out of campus. So how can you be able to really merge the complexity of that person getting a job and the complexity of the current situation that is prevalent among the country? What data storytelling gives you is the skills and the knowledge to be able to really combine and identify that these are actually outliers, and this is not actually the narrative that is prevalent amongst recent graduates from public universities in Kenya. So what another function of data storytelling is harnessing collective knowledge or decisions. So it accelerates conversations which identify problems and designs possible solutions in a short period of time. And the reason why it is able to do that is because it's taking out the bias and it's actually taking out the ignorance and the lack of information that might be experienced by the people who were involved in that decision making. So once the data is actually very clear that this is what it's doing, you can be able to really make decisions quickly, and you can be able to actually have problems solved in a much more shorter space of time. Then the last function of data storytelling is communicating the impacts of these services. So it enables governments, public bodies, charities, and non-profit organizations to communicate the impact of their work effectively. Especially for most of you guys who are based in South Sudan, especially if you work in the NGO space, you can be able to use data storytelling to really communicate your impact in a much more effective way, and in a way that is much more captivating for the people who you actually are presenting the information to. Somebody is talking. Let's hope that they can be able to identify and mute. And so we continue because of time. Continue because of time. Let's keep filling the class, the attendance list. So what we are going to look next are the principles. Today, it seems that so many people don't have their names in the attendance list, so please work on that. So principles for data storytelling. The first principle is it's a user-led data research. So it's an act of narrating a human story behind the numbers. So what we are doing is we are providing context, we are providing a human face, we are providing applications, we are providing specific use cases to be able to tell the story and the emotions and the people who are actually behind those numbers. So that does not appear like it's completely abstract stuff, but it's actually something that can be able to easily relate to. So another principle is it's an act of narrating a compelling story. By compelling, I mean a story that can be able to touch people, a story that people can be able to identify with, a story that people can actually be able to personalize it and apply it to their specific example. So it's an act of narrating a compelling story. Then participation. Data storytelling is a catalyst that encourages thinking and conversations. So for people to actually be able to contribute to the stories that we actually dealing with. So we keep progressing. So tips. Number one, never present a single number is data storytelling really is about providing context and insightful meaning. So if you just go there and present a single number, it completely throws the audience off because they do not understand what you're talking about. But if you're able to compare, for example, elements between different sectors of the economy, they can be the way our brains are designed is we are designed to identify patterns. So as much as we want to present different kinds of numbers so that we can be able to provide a context, from that context, make sure that you highlight one focal point. Since we are designed to identify patterns, it helps your audience to focus their attention on one particular thing you want them to take away from your presentation. So you remember that we talked about issues like people need to be able to have takeaways that they can be able to apply in their context. That's what we mean. Highlight what you want people to remember. Highlight what you want people to identify. Highlight what you want, what your target. So really what we mean is by that is, an example is bullseye. As long as much as the board is there and all the other lines are there, but highlight that bullseye that you want people to aim and target to be able to really use that as a takeaway. So another design tip is use colors to provide contrast. So use colors to be able to really highlight the specific thing that you want to be able to have people identify with. You're going to look at that when you look at how you design your graphs, how you present your data. You're going to look at that when you are doing data visualization. So another point is be consistent with your style and format with the presentation so that you do not keep distracting the audience as they try to identify like what you want. Because when you change the pattern, it means to the audience in their mind, it means that you're actually trying to highlight something different. So what you need to do to avoid those conflicts of interest, because what you do not want your presentation to actually distract people from the presentation that you're making, or the design of your presentation to distract people from actually understanding the point you are trying to make. So be consistent with your style and the format that you use so that people do not have divided attention trying to switch between formats and styles that you have used in your presentation of the data. Then of course, use appropriate chart types. We're going to look at the different uses of chart types. We're going to look at the steps for data storytelling. So these are the steps. So we're going to look to go through them from the first step to the last step. So of course, we are going to also share the presentation so that you guys can be able to go and really summarize the key takeaways that we are trying to make so that you can be able to apply them in your context. So the first step is, of course, what is your driving question? Identify what you want to know, identify what you want to highlight, identify what you want to really address. That is always the first step, because that will affect the kind of presentation that you use, the kind of content you will look for, the data, the research places that you will look into. All those kind of things will be determined by driving question. And the data research, what will be the ideal data sources to answer the question? Is the data set already in place, or do you need to actually do more data collection, or to actually be able to design a completely new data set for your particular question? So you find that, especially with the digitalization of very many organizations and government departments, most of the data that you need to address specific questions that you want to address are actually available. So really those data that are not available are really those things that are bit outliers or novel topics or questions that you want to address. So, and what that does is it really simplifies your work, because you do not have to go about doing the data collection and designing the questionnaires and all that kind of stuff. You actually already have the data mostly available online or in specific places, depending on the context that you are in. And then obviously the visualizations, how can you visualize the data set to answer the question that you have? And then data engagement, what do you want to find out? What questions will help analyze data and turn it into actionable insight? Because, and the key importance with that is you find that from one data set, people can be able to take different directions. So you really have to understand what you want to find out, so that it will affect whether you're going to look more on the qualitative data, the quantitative data. Do you need to merge both? Do you need to have a time series? Do you need to have static bar charts? All that kind of things are actually dependent on what you want to find out. And obviously, once you identify what you want to find out, you can be able to really answer the questions in a much more simplified way. Then obviously another key component is sharing your learning, and how can you be able to share the lessons into action? Who do you need to target? Who do you need to share this information with? Do you need to share it with a government official? Do you need to share it with NGOs? Do you need to share it with the United Nations? Do you need to share it with university students? Do you need to share it with the general public? So really identifying that is also a key component, because what that does is it also really helps you to be able to identify the patterns that you will use to be able to share the findings that you were able to get. So we're going to look at two methods for telling stories. So I see that a lot of people are really struggling to be able to fill the attendance. So what we can do what we can do is we can give people a 5 minutes. We stop the presentation so that they can be able to fill the attendance quickly, so that the attention can get back into the presentation. I think that's easier, because I see so many people really not paying their attention because maybe their names are not there. So let's have like a 5-minute break, that then we can be able to get back to finishing the last few bits of the presentation.
Hello, everyone. Good evening to you. It was really a nice session. I enjoyed. Thanks for my book and the space. I am John Day. I am John Day.
Did I kindly enable me to share my screen?
Well,
Did I kindly enable me to share my screen?
madam?
Hello?
Yes. Well,
Hello?
Hello, I think Bida is up.
Oh, Bida is off?
Yeah, but you can share.
I do not know what this.
So guys, we are continuing with our lesson. We are just remaining with about 3 or 4 slides, and then we are going to have the end of the class. I hope you guys can be able to see my screen.
Now it's clear. It's clear.
Okay, so we are going to look at 2 methods of telling stories with data, and then we are going to look at some examples of people who have actually used it in their own context. Then we are going to finish the class. So maybe around the next maybe 20 minutes max, then we are going to finish. So the first one is discovery method. Discovery journey. This involves walking the audience through your personal journey as you conducted the analysis that led you to your big idea and your recommendations. It's the version of the normal way of giving presentations, starting with the recommendations, the reason for that, and the evidence to support your results. So what this method means is for you guys who have been who have participated in this like research reports and stuff like that, when somebody is usually giving their recommendations or giving a report, they actually start with the recommendations. And then they try to explain that this is why we are recommending this and stuff like that. And the danger with that is once you tell people the recommendation, it's like you are reaching the climax of the story at the beginning. Therefore, people do not have anything to look forward to. And that is usually very dangerous because the audience can very quickly switch off. But then, if you take them through the discovery journey, you are able to work with them step by step by step to be able to tell them that actually we did a research, we were able to do a survey, then these are the findings of the survey, this is the number of people who reported, these are the number of people who responded, this is the amount of content we were able to get. And then you take them through how, like, you don't of course have to explain everything to them, but you show them the steps that you were able to take to be able to arrive at your conclusion. And the good thing with that is people are much more likely to identify with your story because you can be able to really tell them that this is how you're able to find out what we already have. And so you take them through, you save your big idea for the end, but you actually build up the steps that led you to the top of the story that you are trying to explain to them. And so really what you need to do is to be able to turn your ideas into the ideas of the audience, since people are more likely to pursue their own ideas rather than those of other people. And what the goodness with that, is if you take them through the process, they can be able to see for themselves the recommendations and the ideas that you're able to get from the data. And people are much more likely to really accept their ideas much more quickly than compared to the ideas of other people. So that's how that method is able to help you to communicate your data more easily. So, and then the other one is the how we got there method. So this technique involves 2 steps. And the first step is identify the 3 elements of your data. Identify the 3 elements of your data. That's the beginning, the middle, and the end of this, and the end of the story. And also focus on the most important information. So that is how you are able to really highlight that how we got here method by focusing on the most important information in your story, because you find that the story has a lot of content, but if you are able to highlight the specific part, you will be able to really easily find out that people can be able to identify more because you are able to focus the attention on the most important part of the information. So really in this method, you need to be real, you need to be open, and to really to be honest with all the facts. So those are the 2 methods that we can be able to use. The discovery method, where you take people through the journey to the end of the story, and then the how we got here, where you identify the beginning, the context, and then the challenge or the solution. Then you are able to do that by focusing on the most important information of your data story. And I've put a link here for that gives the explanation for the 2 methods more clearly. I'm going to put it in the notes so that you guys can be able to go and watch it for yourselves and identify more.
Steve, you're not hearing anything? Are we okay over there?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, it's okay. I can hear you. Can hear you.
Can hearing you. We're getting.
So in fact, we are just going to do the last slide for the class. So just bear with me because what we are going to do is actually examples of data journalism. So we are going to do the examples. So we are going to take two patterns, and I'm just going to explain them, and then I'm going to put the links in there so that you guys can be able to have to go and look at it with you free time. And what I've done is I've just put the media houses. So for the data champions, I've put 3 examples. I've put 3 examples that you guys can be able to go and look at. And then we are going to look at them more in details when we do the data visualization, because what these people were able to do is they were really able to merge 2 skills, the skills of journalism and the skills of data visualization, to be able to explain their points in a much more concrete way. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Al Jazeera. So they have a media house called Al Jazeera Labs that really helps to be able to tell the stories in a much more clear way. And then we have, so when you look at their work, which you're going to look at when we do the data visualization part, because the tools that they are using are very, of course, a bit complicated, but we are going to look at how they were able to use the colors, how they were able to put together the story to be able to explain the story that they are putting out to their audiences. And then there is a person called Mona Chalabi. She's originally from Iraq, but she's based, I think, in USA. And what she does is she actually tells her story using hand-drawn visuals. And she's an excellent champion in that. We are going to look at some examples of her charts. I've also put in the link for their Twitter handle there so that you guys can go and look at how they are doing their work. Because these other journalists and media houses, they are actually using computer-aided graphics. They're using computer tools to be able to tell the story. But for Mona, what she does is she actually draws the work. So she's very artistic and very creative. So you guys need to check out her work. We are going to look at that when we look at the graphs, because I actually have a whole set of her graphs in our presentation that we are going to look at for graphs to be able to use for your data visualization. And of course, the New York Times and an organization called The Pudding. So these are some of the people who have really done a very good job in using data storytelling to be able to really tell compelling stories that are captivating and that are able to capture the attention of the audience and communication in a clear and more understandable way. Then we are going to look at data journalism sites. Of course, there is one for data journalism. And then an example of data journalism is for Investigative Journalism Network. And these are people who have actually used their work to be able to really understand and communicate. And I have put some examples there, but they are located in the site that I've put the link there. Something like the Pandora Papers, climate disaster, secret tax files, and the Arab-Israeli conflict. So those are 4 examples of actually taking the steps to be able to really move from the story of what you want to achieve. Techno, please mute yourself. Techno, come on, 18p. Techno, come on, 18p. Please mute.
Techno, come on, 17, you are interrupting. Please mute your phone.
Yeah. You guys can tell me I'm on mute. So I'm just going to use this one for explanation. So you see that they were able to give a progress from 1917 to 2020. And what it does is it highlights the various stages of the conflict and they are able to explain all that using just one map, and then they give a scale here, not a scale, a legend that explains what the colors mean. So Palestine, Israeli, then under Israeli occupation, they give the years, and they give the explanation of the blue color. So then under each image, they have a short text to be able to explain. So really this, you can be able to use this, and we're also going to see how Mona Chalabi is able to really use things like this to be able to tell more compelling stories. So guys, that's the end of my class for today. I really hope that you guys have been able to learn something. My apologies, the network was really bad, but I hope that next time we can be able to improve on that. I'm going to share the resources in the class, in the Google Classroom right away from now. Then we can be able to address the questions as they come to an end. So I hope you guys are not leaving the meeting. Maybe if people have questions, we can be able to ask, or okay, we can be able to ask questions first. Any questions? Maybe you can unmute yourself, or you can be able to put your question on the chat box. Any questions?
Steve, I'm asking whether you will upload the slides in the classroom.
Yes. Right now, I'm going to upload right away.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was asking.
Okay.
Steve, I want to know, as a journalist, if I'm like to report the unity state plotting when it is politicized, how do I do that? Because to report it, some people took it as a biased information.
What do you like? Can you repeat the first part of the question?
Yeah, like the unity state flooding, the ongoing flooding in unity state, which is affecting the civilian there. It, according to my understanding, it is being politicized when you talk about it. And as a journalist, how do I report it based on the fact finding?
So what you need to do is, okay, I'm giving my opinion on that. And what you can be able to do is, you can be able to as long as you have the correct data, you can be able to work on another story and be able to put together the findings that really negate the issue of, to really highlight, like when did the flooding start, any mitigations that the government have put in place, or any other, if there is another background conflict going on that is affecting the issue of flood mitigation. You can be able to really get another story out of that, in my opinion. And the way you do that is make sure that you collect all the data that you can be able to collect. Just take your time, do the research, and then you can be able to compile all that together. You can actually work on with you on the same, because we are expecting you guys to be able to produce at least one data story before the end of the sessions, before the end of the program in 3 months. So maybe you can be able to identify that as one of your data stories that you can be able to work on. And then we can be able to, we are going to learn on how to be able to do the visualization and stuff like that. Any other question?
Thank you.
Steve, I have a question. This question is on investigative journalism, because I understand that investigative journalism, you deal with the top profile people, and there are obviously risks that come along with that. How do you address those risks?
The challenge with investigative journalism is you really have to be very careful in terms of the stories that you target. And one of the ways to be able to do that is to hide your identity, to be able, you can be able to really like do a sort of underground investigation and not exposing yourself. And you should be able to, but of course you can be able to collect the data but you really have to be very careful so that you do not put yourself in danger. Because as journalists, one of the things that is practiced in this profession is that no story is worth a life. So you have to be very careful in terms of how you identify the stories that you will be able to highlight. Yes, Alex Asiki.
I think I wanted to add to that, brother, on that issue of dealing with high-profile people, especially politicians. This, I think, to be a data journalism or a data journalism, you're not so much exposed to the public. For example, like riots, complexity of realities like riots, maybe campaigns. I think to be a data journalist, you're not directly involved. You're not directly involved with such scenarios. But what you can do is you can be able to use your techniques on how to collect the data. I think that's how I'm going to add a little bit.
Yes. Thank you for the time. This is Asiki, Alex. I would like to know if there will be another session of more practical, because this one's more of a theory.
So guys, I think we can end the class there because my net is quite unstable, and I'm going to post on the Google Classroom, and then we can be able to continue from there.
Thank you.
Is that okay? Yes? Is that okay, guys?
Hey, it's okay. It's okay. Thank you.
Okay.